Okay, so the purpose of this assignment is for you to be able to demonstrate to me that you understand how diction and syntax help to create the passage's tone and purpose. So, because if you understand the tone and the purpose of what you're reading, you can create so much more meaning out of it and understand the meaning behind it so much better. So you're going to be writing a paragraph that takes what you learned from the passage you analyzed in class with your group, and you're going to take what we discussed about it and what you learned and put it in paragraph form and be able to explain to me the how and the why about the passage, okay? So if you want to use a different passage that another group did, that is fine. Sometimes the passage you get isn't one that really jives with you, or you understand a different one better, and that's fine. So as long as you pick from one of the passages that's on the back of that chart, whatever one you understand the best, that's fine with me. So what I have done is created a template. On the left-hand side here, I put it in MLA format just to remind you what it looks like. And you are picking one of those passages, which is a paragraph for most of you, for most of the passages. And I created a template that gives you a starting point, okay? So the blanks are, of course, where you're gonna fill in information. But the wording of my template may not be exactly the kind of wording you need when you're actually writing your paragraph. This is just a guide. So by no means is it going to work if you simply try to plug in words where the blanks are. You're going to have to tweak a little bit and add your own words and flair to the paragraph. Use the template as a guide to get you started, to get you to kind of know what I'm asking, but by no means are you just filling in blanks, okay? So over here, what I've done is created a sample paragraph for the passage, which is paragraph 8 in the book. It's the one I used as an example on the chart when I first explained what I wanted y'all to do for the chart. So you can see that my paragraph that I wrote based on the template is longer, okay? So notice that this paragraph is longer than this paragraph, a little more detailed, because I have tweaked each part of the paragraph on the template, okay? I have added my own words or changed things to fit my passage. So I just want to emphasize that, because a lot of students see this and they're like, oh, all I have to do is fill in blanks with a few words. No. Use mine as a guide. Use some of the same words and phrases if you need to, but you're going to have to put your own ideas in there, okay? So what I've also done is I've color-coded each part of the paragraph with the different pieces of information I want you to try to analyze. So I matched it up with the paragraph that I wrote, so you can kind of see how I have taken the template and made it work for my particular passage, okay? So what I'm gonna do is kind of take you through the actual paragraph and just kind of point back to the part of the template so that you can kind of understand, you know, the point of this. All right, so this paragraph is the paragraph at the very beginning of the story where she is saying that she was imagining herself as the perfect child prodigy. This is the part at the very beginning where she's actually still kind of excited about the idea that her mom, you know, wants her to become a prodigy and all these great things that she can become. And seeing these child prodigies on TV has inspired her and her mom. So this is before she gets to the point that she realizes how unrealistic it is. So this passage is where she is imagining herself as a ballerina, and oh, I was like the Christ child being lifted out of the manger, and I was the Cinderella. Like, so this is that passage from the first page. So it starts off, okay? In paragraph 8, it is evident that Jing Mai is inspired to become the prodigy that her mother envisions for her success in America. Topic sentence, telling you what paragraph it is, and kind of the point, right? That's a good way to lead into your paragraph. No need to mention the title and the author for this because it's kind of understood. We're just analyzing a piece of a passage and we're all looking at the same text. So if this were part of an actual essay, of course, the first paragraph would be more like an introduction. where we would mention all that information. Okay, so we have our topic sentence. Then we're going to move into a little bit of text to sort of support the first sentence, but also kind of remind the reader of what part of the chapter or excerpt we're looking at. So Jing Mai recalls in this part of the paragraph, Jing Mai recalls how, quote, she was just as excited as her mother, and describes the images of prodigies that she, quote, tries on for size. Okay, I chose to take little quotes. You can just put it in your own words if you're wanting to describe what the paragraph's about. However you want to do it, make it short and sweet, no more than a sentence or two. So these first two sentences set sort of the purpose for the passage as far as like what it's about and gives us some context. Okay, so now we get into the analysis part. Okay, so I'm kind of hoping you're going to look at where I'm pointing here and sort of compare that to what I have over here, even though it's not, you can't see the whole thing because of the way this screen is set up. But all right, so the next thing is to kind of get into an analysis of the diction and the syntax. Okay, now I want you to understand you don't have to say the words diction and syntax if you don't want to. I have said it here just to kind of make the point that that's what I'm about to analyze. But after I've said it one time, you don't have to mention those words again. I need explanation. Okay, so here we go. So Jing Mai recalls how she was just as excited as her mother and describes the images of prodigies that she tries on for size. However, Tan, the author of the whole thing, Tan's diction and syntax in the passage shows that when reflecting on this time as an adult, Jing Mai realizes that her fantasies were so distant from herself that she knew they would never actually become a reality. So what I'm doing here is I'm showing basically how the diction and syntax functions to lead to the purpose of the passage, okay? The purpose of the passage, part of it is for her to reflect on the fact that her fantasies at first were so unrealistic that all it was doing was setting her up for failure and kind of foreshadowing to us that it was only inevitable. She was going to not live up to it. So this blue part is kind of like where you are saying the purpose of the passage is, and I'm going to analyze diction and syntax to show you the purpose, okay? So that's kind of what you're telling me. So now to the purple part. Now's where I give some examples. I'm going to explain the diction and the syntax and the examples. Again, don't use the word diction and syntax over and over again. Get to the point of your explanation. For example, Tan chooses to allude to figures of childlike perfection that are almost inhuman, comparing herself to, quote, dainty ballerina, Christ child, Cinderella. The strong connotation of these allusions foreshadows that Jing Mai will almost certainly experience failure at her attempts to become a child prodigy. So I am linking back the choices that Amy Tan made, the allusions, the word choice, the comparisons, those she chose on purpose because they need no explanation. We know why she has chosen them, because they all show images of unrealistic, attainable perfection. So this is pointing back to the blue, which is helping to support how the diction creates the overall purpose, okay? So next part of the template is continuing on with some discussion, more discussion of diction and or syntax, okay? So now I'm looking at moving from diction, I'm moving to syntax. Tan also purposely structures her sentences. Instead of saying syntax, I said structures her sentences so that it is relevant, so that it is evident Jing Mai inserts herself into a fantasy world of perfection. For example, so now I went from talking about diction in how she asserts her childlike perfection in her goals to sentence structure. For example, Tan chooses to repeat the phrase I was, followed by phrases such as floating on my tiptoes, lifted out of the manger, and stepping from the carriage. to convey images of childlike innocence and perfection, okay? These images continue to foreshadow the realities of her later failures, which lead to the central conflict with her mother and herself. So I've now given two different examples of how she has these unreal expectations for herself that she's just kind of inevitably will not live up to. One was by her word choice and her comparisons. Another was with her sentence structure, the parallel structure of repeating I was, okay? And then using these things like floating, lifted, stepping. So you can hear the parallel structure in that. You don't have to say the word parallel structure, okay? You don't have to say the word diction. I want you to explain. That's the most important. Dropping those terms in your papers is not the important thing. The important thing is explaining what they mean and why they're used. So the next part is tone, okay? So now we've talked about diction. We've talked about a little bit of syntax. Now, how does this lead to the tone? In this passage, Jingmai's tone is whimsical and optimistic, which is in stark contrast to the listless dejection she feels later in the narrative. So, because she has all these fantasies that I've told you about here, you now know her tone seems to be more optimistic about being able to achieve them at this point, and whimsical kind of means like fairy tale-ish. So I'm leading you to why I believe that's the tone, because I've explained some things here that lead me to believe that. And then the last sentence, okay, is the next part of the template, okay? The last sentence is leading back to the purpose, okay? So all these different parts of the template I have expanded upon. The blanks are where my ideas are. And of course, I've had to restructure the template itself, the words in the template, to kind of fit my needs. The last sentence, the gold sentence here, so nice little transition word. Therefore, the purpose of the passage is to expose that the central conflict Jingmai will deal with is the sense of failure that she will feel at not being able to live up to her mother's expectations. Okay, so I've opened up the passage with a topic sentence that gives me a little context about it. I've discussed the purpose kind of in general terms. I've discussed syntax and diction as they relate to the purpose. I've then led to the tone. Because I've discussed syntax and diction, I now understand what the tone could be. And then I close with another statement that furthers my understanding of the purpose, okay? So the purpose is to expose the conflict that she and her mom are having with each other, or that she is dealing with herself, kind of depending on which passage you're doing. So this kind of gets more specific about literally the purpose of the passage is to, and then your little word you pick. So that's kind of where you're narrowing it to, like being real specific here at the end. So it seems like a lot, but it's not. It's very simple. Topic sentence, context of the passage, analysis of diction and syntax, purpose, okay, diction and syntax, leading to the tone, and then the overall purpose, okay? So remember, your paragraph, as long as you discuss the essentials, does not have to look like mine. You don't even have to use the template if you don't want to, if it confuses you. The template is a guide to help you have a starting point.